Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Peter Ward, and as chairperson of FLAC, it's my great honour and duty to welcome you here today for the official opening of FLAC's new offices here on Dorset Street. It is impossible to quantify the number of people who have contributed to the work and success of FLAC over the last 5 decades, and in this year we celebrate a very special 50th anniversary, having been founded in 1969, and we are delighted that David Byrne, one of our founders, joins us here today, and a special welcome to you, David. Since 1969, FLAC has campaigned on the very simple principle that every person in our society is entitled to access information about the laws which govern us all, and to have access to the legal system which administers those laws. The principle of equal access to justice for all reflects a very simple but fundamental belief in the fact that we share this island as equals, and that inability to access the law and the legal system represents a denial of a fundamental constitutional guarantee that all persons are equal before the law. FLAC has relied from the very outset on the work of volunteer solicitors and barristers, and that work is essential to the service that we provide, and we are particularly grateful to both the Law Society and the Bar Council for its support throughout those 5 decades, and we welcome Patrick Dorgan, President of the Law Society, and Michael D Higgins, Chairperson of the Bar Council, who are with us today. We also, in our PLA work, have engaged in close cooperation with many law firms throughout the country, but primarily in the city, to deliver a new pro bono scheme, which has been a very considerable success over the past number of years. And we welcome also the PLA partners represented today from McCann Fitzgerald's, A&L Goodbody, Arthur Cox, Evershed Sutherland's and Matheson's. It is, however, a measure of our society's failure to guarantee equality before the law that the services of this organisation are demanded now to an even greater degree than ever before. Our campaign on the core issue of equal access to justice ultimately led to the establishment of the Civil Legal Aid Scheme, and we're delighted to welcome John McDaid, CEO, here today. That legal aid scheme provides a vitally important service for legal aid in civil cases, and we continue to campaign for its expansion and the extension of the areas of law in which it works. Providing a legal service to the most marginalised and excluded in our society has led us to conduct campaigns for law reform and take test cases in many substantive areas of law, in the early days in the area of family law, and then developing into social welfare law, debt and credit law, and more recently cases in the area of gender recognition and even data privacy. We have drawn on the support and the experience that we gleaned from the service we provided to campaign for legal and policy changes that can have a real impact in reducing inequality and in challenging poverty. We've worked positively with government departments throughout those decades, including the Departments of Justice, Social Protection, Environment and Jobs, who are represented here today, and with many state bodies and fellow NGOs and all of the political parties on issues of common concern. Particularly want to thank the Citizens Information Board and welcome Angela Black and her colleagues, with whom we work incredibly closely in providing the service through our clinics. I would like to pay tribute to the thousands of volunteers who have worked for FLAC since 1969, and I would also like to pay particular tribute to those who have worked full-time in this organisation since that time in the 1970s, when we first had lawyers devote their professional lives to the pursuit of the aim of equal access for justice. It is because of the incredible expertise and commitment of all of those individual staff members that we're in the very happy position that we are in today to welcome you to this beautiful new headquarters, of which we are immensely proud. We welcome Nolene Blackwell, Michael Farrell, Yvonne Woods, Emer Butler, other members of staff who have joined us here today and who worked tirelessly over previous years to bring us to this important historical milestone. And in our current staff, under Eilish Barry as Chief Executive Officer, we have created what we hope you will agree is a professionalised service in the NGO sector, and the professionalisation of the work that we do, I think, is amply demonstrated by the beautiful building that you stand in at this time. But special mention must be made of Catherine Hickey, who has done an incredible amount of work to bring this particular project to fruition, and we thank Catherine. Who, as usual, has to be sought out in the way that I just had to seek her out, for she's never center stage. One client commented upon attending a consultation here recently and looking around the building. She said, "Wow, it's just like a real solicitor's office." But when you think about it, there is an awful lot in that comment, and too much in that comment. We are firmly of the belief that this building should stand as a symbol of the principle that legal services must be equally available to all in our society. But it's not a service that we can provide to everyone, which means that the work that we do continues with as much urgency as before. Our move to this building, which, as you may have noticed, stands on the site of the birthplace of one of our most esteemed playwrights, Sean O'Casey, and his daughter Siobhan, we are delighted to welcome here today, who has travelled over from England to join us. Sean O'Casey's daughter and his granddaughter joined us today, and we're absolutely thrilled that they have. The building has been renovated and purchased by FLAC with the support of Atlantic Philanthropies, and Mary Sutton joins us today, and we want to say a very special thanks to Mary Sutton for the incredible support that Atlantic Philanthropies have provided to this organisation over the last decade or so. But as most of you will be aware, Atlantic Philanthropies are departing this landscape, and the support that they have given us will require to be replaced. And in its absence, we will need very considerable further financial support from all of our existing funders and supporters to build on that success, and we will have to face the challenge of finding new ones. In this year, we enjoy special celebrations, as I've said, of our 50th anniversary. These new premises provide us with an opportunity to be a centre of legal innovation and creativity, and for the pursuit of human rights and equality for many decades to come. And we thank all of you for your incredible support in allowing us to reach that milestone. We are particularly honoured to welcome President Michael D Higgins and Sabina as our guests of honour to perform the opening ceremony. President Higgins has been an almost lifelong supporter of FLAC in his previous capacities as a public representative, as a senator, as a TD, as a Minister of Government. He has been unflinching in his support for the work that we do and in supporting a legislative agenda that seeks to achieve the goals that we share. President Higgins has made inclusion and the achievement of equality one of the tenets of his presidency. These are the values that FLAC shares and have been at the heart of 50 years of campaigning for human rights and are foundational in our ongoing work to achieve equal access to justice. And therefore, it is my great pleasure and honour to welcome President Michael D Higgins to open this building. Thank you.
Culture and Gaydal, she has made a buicas, Awesome. Firkin Focha Dariship, Romhain is Remavan Kele Sitato, and Chastalon. August is so called Capim Hene. I will read off agus something ni hi shawan done at Sir Coil the lead, Octa Winter, Neherin Ilium, or Huskin Shop. Agus said to Officer got Valiant, Agus Kamala should be Officer Lock Position Queer. I just want to say how delighted I am to be here to celebrate the 50th anniversary of an organisation that has contributed so much to the achievement of a rights-based legal system in Ireland. And I do thank Gaelish Barry for her invitation to be here, and to all of you for that most generous welcome. I have to be very careful about mentioning names in my remarks this afternoon, because I know so many of the people in this room that I have encountered in different circumstances. But above all else, I do want to congratulate you on all that you have in fact been offering to the whole principle of access, equal access to the legal system and the legal process. Peter mentioned, that I have been aware of the different movements that for so long in different capacities. But there's one I should say that not many people, not everyone may know, is that the late Kevin Boyle's office and mine were next door to each other in Tower 2, Block 2 in UIG. And many people, not everyone knows also that Kevin Boyle, in addition to his distinguished legal training, had in fact completed a master's degree with Rabinowitz in Cambridge on Irish in prison, particularly on the crimes of which they were convicted. So Kevin and I ran a course that time on the sociology of law. And I thought of you as you mentioned the phrase, just like a real solicitor's office in many cases. As many of my former students were going on to do different things, there was the odd one who did hear that suggestion, you wouldn't want to be getting involved in that kind of thing. But I'm very pleased to be here to celebrate the official opening of what are magnificent new premises in Upper Dorset Street. And of course it has great significance that Sean O'Casey, Sean O'Cahasik, as he would remind to describe himself in the Citizen Army, was born in the regional site in 1880. And what a pleasure it is to be able to publicly acknowledge Siobhan and Siobhan's daughter, and to say both of you. Always, no one can speak of Dublin without thinking of Sean O'Casey. And of course up the road in North Circular is where he wrote his three great plays, the three great Dublin plays. And the year in which FLAC was established was 1969 by 4 students. Was a very, very special year. There was a lot in the air. And the Irish people, so many said, saved themselves from socialism. Well, I also remember it was a most vigorous campaign. I was campaigning bilingually in Connemara, about which I just have to wait until you hear till I get time to write all that up. But the 4 students who decided, it was a very interesting time. As a young lecturer at that time, I remember I was just appointed in '69, and one of the things that had happened, there had been a near revolution in access to 3rd level as a result of the O'Malley decision in relation to free secondary education. It was one of those times in universities where you could hire staff to take care of the huge new intake. It's in that year, I think, as well, that I founded the Workers' Union of Ireland teaching section, because not only were the universities changing in terms of the new intake of young academics, but we had 2 trade unions. We had at this stage, you had the Irish Federation of University Teachers, for which Calarasma was campaigning for members, and I was the Workers' Union of Ireland teaching section. He got everyone above professorial, lectureship level, and I got everyone below. We were trying. But the atmosphere at that time was one which was very conducive to people asking, how can we serve and use our professional skills? And there was a fantastic example given by the 4 students, Dennis McCullough, Ian Candy, David Byrne and Vivian Lammer, were the practical example of that, of people who were just delivering that. It was a profoundly ethical action, and it was a critical moment in Ireland's journey towards the debate for an inclusive democracy, a journey that is not yet finished. And I think that Sean Casey's spirit would be with the voice of those people who are conscious of the class divided nature of society that had to be undone. Of course, an effective judicial system that is available to all had been mentioned in so many formal documents. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights had stated everyone has the right to an effective remedy by the competent national tribunals for acts violating the fundamental rights granted him by the Constitution or by law. They hadn't moved on to the gender usage. They think that is appropriate. Access to legal aid then surely is a requirement of access to justice, and justice for all must lie at the very heart of any democratic society. I think a nation that aspires towards true equality, could not be satisfied with a system of justice that was reliant on the earning power of those who seek to access it, or to accept a situation where those who cannot afford to pay for justice can be more easily deprived of their liberty, or for a view that a fair trial is a commodity, is a right limited to one's capacity to purchase it. More and more in my speeches internationally, I continue to mention, and will continue to mention, the famous Ecuadorian case where you have peasants taking a case against a multinational for poisoning their water supply, and where the chairman of the company involved at the meeting of shareholders in the United States says, we will continue to fight this until hell freezes over, and then we will fight it on the ice. Where you get an army of legal professionals facing group young peasants simply wanting the right to have their water not poisoned, and so on. And this case could be replicated in India and elsewhere. So those who have given up the professional skills to this kind of ethical view of how we are to live together on the planet are very, very important. When the Legal Aid Board was established under the Civil Legal Aid Act of 1995, it was with the clear intention that citizens of insufficient means would not be denied access to necessary legal services and could legally enforce their economic, social and cultural rights. At that time, I think we were down in Mesbury Road, and I was sharing a floor of the office with Mervyn Taylor, and I remember the drafting of this legislation very clearly. It was an important step forward in a state that, after all, invokes principles of equality and social justice. And there is no doubt whatsoever that those who are most vulnerable and marginalised in society are also those who are most at risk of encountering legal difficulties, and most in need of a justice system that is accessible and that operates in the best interests of all. Those who are homeless, the poor, those with a disability, or those who suffer from mental illness, immigrants, lone parents, and those living or growing up in disadvantaged communities encounter many more legal problems than the rest of the population. I actually didn't have time, but I really looked, for example, at the timeline which was circulated with the announcement of today's event from 1969 on to the present, and we just looked at the very significant areas in which FLAC has been accessed, and they were in all those areas that I have just mentioned. But there are often problems too that could be easily resolved with access to timely legal advice. And because such access is denied, and many barriers are placed between disadvantaged citizens and legal assistance, they often escalate into situations that profoundly impact on the well-being, self-esteem and security of an individual and their family, casting long shadows and having far-reaching implications. When vulnerable citizens are abandoned to navigate a complex legal system alone, they are experiencing a grave injustice. Now here, of course, that navigating means navigating even in relation to language itself. And very early on, bringing my students to the district court where people were up on for some infringement or another, and the justice had a particular language, and those who were before him had one, and one could easily say to the other, and you're giving up the drink now for life, Your Honour, and so forth. There are huge barriers in language, and there is, I think, very often a tendency in Ireland to say, sure, we're just one small country, aren't we all equal in Ireland? We are not, and we are equal in so many ways that we've yet to address. But I think that experiencing a grave injustice means that that injustice could deprive a person of income, a roof over their head, or their freedom and liberty, An injustice could exclude them from employment or education. An injustice that could deny them access to their children, reunification with their family, equality in relation to social welfare. And FLAC has covered all of those in that long timeline from 1969 on to the present. And it is worrying to know that last year's figures issued by the Irish Penal Reform Trust to the Oireachtas Education Committee show that the majority of those currently in Irish prisons, and we're speaking about last year, have never sat a state exam, with over half having left school before the age of 15. And it is revealing that prisoners in Ireland are 25 times more likely to come from deprived communities, indicating a very clear link between social disadvantage and crime and punishment. And it has actually got worse, if anything, since the time I was looking at this when I was on the McBride Commission on prisons. And I sometimes think about this, looking at the most recent work in sociological theory, about which is really built a lot about on how if you respond to society. And I often think about all those families and all those houses. If you say, what do the courts mean to them? It means that their life is to be structured in staying out of the courts. And you speak to another social class and you say, what do the courts mean to you? It is there that you will make a very good living and a good profession. So depending from which class perspective you look at law and justice and the institutions and so on, it reveals something to you, and something upon which all of the people in this room are of course committed to, and that is trying to have, if you like, a society that in a republic that is more equal. I think it is so striking for me, anyway, looking back on it as a sociologist, as a citizen, how the stark difference in how families from different classes, and their younger members in particular, envisage what society means for them. Or as the new sociological theory from people like Hartmut Rosa and others would say, how they resonate with the society. A society that is full of pitfalls and threats, that you have to try to tell your children you must avoid this, and you must avoid that, and you must be careful about this. And about others in which I meet, for example, as I'm giving them different awards, and said there are all these wonderful opportunities opening up before you here and in Europe and in the world, and you're just going to go on and so forth. That is, I think, the flat refutation of the suggestion that we are all equal. We are not. I think that the biggest problem with regard to access to justice is the prohibitive cost of being involved in legal action. And reforms, I suggest as well, to the legal system must bear all of that in mind as much as they can for people who make a case for corporate efficiency. There can be very few citizens who do not know someone who is unable to obtain legal advice or court representation for the simple reason that they could not afford it. And the cost of legal aid has increased, while in some parts of Ireland waiting times for initial and follow-up consultations are very excessive. And FLAC's own report, Accessing Justice in Hard Times, demonstrated that during the recession, increased numbers of people, including those in debt or who had been made unemployed, were denied access to lawyers and as a result were denied access to justice. Indeed, it is one of the great failures of the European Union that the only fundamental, extensive report on the impact of austerity was carried out by the Secretary General to the Council of Europe. Apart from that, no assessment of an adequate kind on the implications of austerity for the low socioeconomic groups is in existence. We know that our right to justice is fundamental to human rights protection, a primary element of an individual's entitlement as an equal citizen of any state. And it is simply not acceptable in a state that claims that is a democracy and that claims to be a republic, that the most vulnerable section of our society is unable to access our legal system or is prevented from doing so in a timely manner. And that is a situation which damages the very fabric of our society. In entrenching and exacerbating inequality and class, at the very root of democracy lies a respect for all citizens and a refusal to foster a culture of privilege and advantage for those who can afford it. There is no natural law of all of this. and it is all open to change. And if we are to achieve a republic in its fullest sense, institutional and as an experience, it must be founded on a profound spirit of generous humanity and a necessary inclusiveness. And I must say about all of this as well, they were among I mentioned the kind of people who did law, as they would say, and all the rest of it. They were among the most exciting people to be with. That had this extra bit of people. They were good company. And I think it was that spirit that led to the establishment of FLAC 50 years ago. It is that has seen it grow and develop to an organisation that today provides legal advice and information directly through 66 clinics across the country. The demand for FLAC services continues to increase. And to learn that last year you provided legal information or advice to 25,238 members of the public, people who would have been at such a huge disadvantage without it. And in addition to that important critical service, you've contributed actively to the debate on the provision and have published reports and papers on a number of key legal issues that have contributed actively to the debate on the provision of legal services for all citizens, through research, the publishing of reports, papers on a number of issues. Indeed, one of your most recent achievements was the removal of the requirement for legal aid applicants to make a financial contribution in domestic violence cases. FLAC were of course represented then too on the Pringle Committee, which led to the establishment of the Legal Aid Board in 1990, while your establishment of the Public Interest Law Alliance was also an important milestone and has covered significant issues, including the gender pay gap. And I have that long list. You know it yourselves. I know that FLAC will continue to campaign and work through advocacy, casework and analysis of legal and social issues that will all help to eradicate social and economic exclusion in Irish society. I go back again and I often think of that. 2 children born on the same day, looking at what different kinds of life may they look forward to. We can be celebrating all the centenaries until the cows come home. But until we have in fact levelled the opportunities of those children, we will not have achieved really the elements, the fundamental basic elements of a republic. I know that you will continue this Mullin ship agus to go in got ragas banach to gakir to make a shula is na valley is sulis and Tom Tollachia. As President of Ireland, Marultron, I so want to express how deeply grateful we should all be for your generous and altruistic work and for the outstanding contribution you have made towards the creation of a fairer and more just society, which is still there for the creation, and you have given so much work to it. Those of you who are working for an inclusive republic can take great example from you. I want to acknowledge the dedicated, generous work of that most important part of your organisation, FLAC, the volunteers. Already you have heard from Peter the number of those who have been doing that. It includes the hundreds of lawyers around the country who volunteer at FLAC clinics, the lawyers who support FLAC's casework, the lawyers who are members of the Pro Bono Alliance, the members of the Student FLAC Society, interns, and of course the members of the FLAC Council. I'm delighted to see the Bar represented here and the Law Society. And can there be any better way of giving delivery of your professional competence than to make it available to those of our citizens in need of it? And your commitment and generous sharing of your time, skills and talents, and indeed of your patience, has had a profound impact on the lives of so many, and your role a valuable and uplifting example of participative citizenship and democracy, reminding us of all that is most hopeful in Irish society. And in that context, may I make special mention, dangerous as it is, of just a small number of people who illustrate this quiet and unrelenting commitment to justice. I've said already the strength of FLAC lies in its network of volunteer professionals and its committed members of staff. I believe that Peter Ward and Don Crew deserve a special word of thanks in recognition for their steadfast dedication and for many years of uninterrupted service to the organisation. Thanks also to Catherine Hickey, the Director of Funding, for her valuable work. May I thank you once again for inviting me, and I want to wish FLAC every success in this lovely new premises as you continue with your vital work. It isn't only therefore a real law office, it is a splendid special law office. Agus gan buigas líb dénim go gorda glyf a sata lacet blícham ar good me, a tá buincham acach agus gwib ras fanach tari, don tá cui ilo. I so wish all of you health and happiness in the future, and the many, many people who have benefited already will not forget you, nor will those for whom you will assist in the future. Thank you very much.
And I'd like to thank you for your very kind words. The privilege and honour is all ours. I think you really appreciate what FLAC has been trying to achieve, and I think the access to justice being essential for equality and true democracy really resonates with FLAC's work. Your comments also resonate with the Chief Justice's commitment to making access to justice a feature of his tenure. Access to justice is a process and a goal, and on a personal level it can let people know what their rights are and how to enforce them. But it's also a gateway to other rights, important rights like housing and in the area of homelessness, debt, social welfare, which are current core areas for FLAC. As you have pointed out, on a societal level, access to justice contributes to social inclusion for marginalised or vulnerable communities and individuals who often experience a number of legal problems in areas of debt, family law, social welfare, housing, homeless and unemployment, many of which occur at the same time. We see that again and again in the case files that we deal with. The greater the disadvantage, the greater the number of possible legal interventions. And providing a legal solution in one area, like homelessness, may have a positive knock-on effect in the other areas. Access to justice may not sound very radical, but as President Higgins has put so eloquently, it is fundamental to democracy and the rule of law. Without access to justice, laws have little or reduced effect if they cannot be enforced. Legislation such as the important new provisions in the Domestic Violence Act, or in relation to the new legislation protecting casual and precarious employment, are effective only as far as they are enforceable. And courts also have a critical role in the rule of law, holding power such as the executive, local authority, banks and other new forms of power such as the tech giants to account. Individuals need access to the courts for the courts to function in that crucial way, and the court's own rules and procedures may inhibit such action. And we have advocated for changes to rules and procedures to make it easier to take cases in the public interest. And we've seen the recent concern expressed by the immigration lawyers that the recent practice direction issued may make it harder for migrants and their families to bring cases. 50 years on, FLAC continues to promote access to justice. We are proud of these significant achievements in casework policy and the thousands of people who have received basic legal information advice over the years. FLAC and its squad of volunteers and pro bono partners cannot begin to meet the legal needs that we encounter on the information line and in the clinics. And as Peter has said, we need a better, more comprehensive scheme of civil legal aid. We also need to fill the current gaps in the system. At the moment, there's no legal aid for cases before the Workplace Relations Commission or in other tribunals such as social welfare appeals, no matter how complex the issue is or how vulnerable the claimant may be. We also have been advocating for legal aid to be available for people facing evictions from their family homes. We also see the need for and the benefit of targeted legal services for disadvantaged groups such as travellers and Roma, and suggest that this type of service be expanded to other such disadvantaged groups such as people with disabilities or former prisoners. Access to justice involves more than access to legal aid. It also includes access to the courts. And on our information phone line, we regularly hear from very distressed and at times vulnerable people who are trying desperately to navigate the court system by themselves, and who are overwhelmed by the rules, the procedures, the language, and who we don't have the capacity to represent. That is why the current review of the administration of civil justice that is going on is very important. And we made submissions to this review containing recommendations on making the courts more accessible for people with disabilities, lay litigants, and making it easier to bring cases in the public interest. The outcome of this review presents a really significant opportunity to improve access to the courts. And it is important that the proposed initiative to make Ireland a centre of excellence for commercial dispute would improve access to justice for everyone. Thank you, President Higgins, for your supportive and affirming words. The values you espouse are foundational to the work we do. The acquisition and refurbishment of this building was facilitated by the generosity of Atlantic Philanthropies. We want to make the building a welcome hub of legal innovation and creativity. It provides us with the base to continue with our work. And I would invite you now, President Higgins, to hold a proud moment to the building no further. The playwright who was born on the March the 13th, 1880, in the house that stood on this site. I understand from Siobhan that the birthplace was somewhere over there near the plants. And the presence of Siobhan O'Casey today makes this opening even more special, and we're delighted that she's here with us today and very honoured that she has made the trip, and we'd also like to welcome her granddaughter and her friends. She's worked as an actress and a director, and in the 1990s she was involved in a cross-border community theatre company based in Northern Ireland. Since then she's been living in Devon, looking after Sean's work and trying to get a book published. I'd like you all now to hear from Siobhan.
Well, what an act to follow. Thank you. I'm just going to read a few rather reassuring things that Sean wrote. And I think he would be as delighted as I am, really. You know, this building was being put to such great use. Anyway, this is a letter written to a Moses Kammer in 27, the first 55 during the McCarthy witch hunts. Dear Mr. Kammer, I have but time to thank you for your very kind letter and to say I am glad that you've liked my books. Of course there is fear in the United States, just as there is fear here and in other places, Ireland for instance, because of the tremendous change that has come and is continuing to come over life everywhere. Most of us are afraid of change, afraid of the future, afraid of the unknown, and that is why we rush back to our old gods and cling around their mouldering altars and shout and threaten those who go by bravely to face what is to come. Man is still fighting fear, and many have to suffer for it, as Socrates did when he drank down the hemlock. But things that have lost their value will have to go. God's stout fingers are tearing out worn things to pieces. The God of Isaac and of Jacob and Abraham and the God of the Christians doesn't humble himself to Hollywood. He's not there. He is with the people who are demanding the greatness of a full life. Well, thanks again, and all good wishes to you, Sean O'Casey. Another short piece from a little-known play of his called Oak Leaves and Lavender, which is more reassuring. We must all go soon. Our end makes but a beginning for others. Only rottenness and ruin must die. Great things we did and said, things graceful and things that had a charm, live on to dance before our eyes admiring. Is the crimson cherry brown? Is the apple blossom black? Is the sky forever grey? No, no. The cherry is as red as ever, the apple blossom rosy, and the sky is often blue. Sweet lavender rears tops of gentle purple, and many a sturdy oak shall strut from a dying acorn, and maidens' lips still quiver for a kiss. And every factory and every home will carve a niche for a graceful coloured candle.
I just want to thank a few people in relation to the building and the refurbishment. Todd Architects, whose design work you can see here, who are represented here today by John Keoghan and Kieran Sweeney. Keith Martin from Westland Construction, who's nearly part of our family at this stage. Our neighbours at Dorset Dental, who facilitated us whenever we could. Kevin and his team at Taste Catering. Derek Spears, who helped with the photographs and whose lovely work is displayed all over the building. Grania Murray, who designed the amazing timeline, and Maya for her lovely music, and the folks at DHR. Peter's already thanked everyone, and I just want to echo those thanks. But and again, while it's invidious to mention members of staff, because I've said before, we have a really terrific staff here. There are two people who made a particular contribution, and I'm repeating Peter and President Higgins. But I'd also like to mention Caroline Smith, who was centrally involved in building the timeline, or the wall as we call it, and the person who has worked so hard, very long hours, including weekends, to make sure that the old building was sold and this one brought and refurbished Captain Hickey. Thank you very much.